But also, in your experience, have you known very many anti-smokers? People who,
I don't have much time for them, to be honest.
well, I don't
Once I figure
either.
out somebody's, once I find somebody's an absolute raving anti-smoker, I'm just like, no. If they're going to hand wave at me when when I'm rolling a cigarette and not actually smoking it, then I'm going to tell them, that all the ash on the ground is at 600 years of cigarette smoking because it never decays, as Ash has told them, and that they should bleach their pets' feet when they take them in the house. I don't know. I've never seen anything in the Daily Mail saying anybody's actually done that. But I live for the day.
Because I had, when I was living in Bristol, virtually my entire circle of friends gradually turned anti-smoking.
Hmm.
It was a very slow process. Usually the women first.
Yeah, the women do seem to be more susceptible to that. I don't know why that is. But I've noticed the biggest anti-smokers are the ones who gave up because they had to. I know quite a few people who gave up because they didn't want to do it anymore, and they didn't care about anybody else smoking. Or they just gave up because they were fed up with it, or because it was costing too much. But the ones who were pushed into it, who were nagged into it, they become really violent anti-smokers. They become, well, born-again non-smokers, basically.
Well,
And the ones most of the folks who've never smoked, I find, don't care. But, there are some who fall for all the hype, and they'll just repeat the hype to you. You're going to give everybody cancer. You're soaking cancer into the walls of your house. And I thought, well, good. You can all bloody die if you don't like it.
well, I can understand in some ways if someone's been forced to stop smoking, they might just turn around and start themselves forcing doing what was done to them.
Yeah. I suppose it's a sort of another part of the cycle of abuse, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're abused, you abuse others. And I did once have a doctor try to give me the suicide pill, Champix. I said, you can give me all the pills you want, they're all going down the toilet. I told him, I don't take aspirin, pal.
Well, I haven't been to a doctor for 10 years.
Oh, that was the time was that the time my leg swelled up, or the time I fell over and cracked 2 ribs and busted a kidney? That was the first time, I think. It was the first time because the doctor said to me, I haven't seen you before. And I said, you were still in school last time I was in here. He was about 30. I thought, you haven't seen me because I wasn't one of your teachers, pal. The second time, they kept me in hospital overnight. I had to take 2 days off work. That was a bit of a pain.
So I've broken ribs.
That was the second lot of broken ribs, yeah. That was the drink-related incident.
Sounds like it might be.
Well, I'd been peeing blood for 3 days and I gave in and called the doctor because I thought this isn't going away on its own. But they ran all the tests. There was nothing wrong with me, and they sent me home with paracetamols, I think, which I didn't take. And I was back at work in 2 days. Nobody at work would believe it. They all thought, you could take 3 months off on sick pay. I thought, nah. I'm already nearly on minimum wage. What the hell use is sick pay?
Was that when you were working at the shop?
Yeah. I was doing a heavy manual job with one arm clamped across my chest for 6 weeks. coughing wasn't too bad. You could feel a cough coming, so you could clamp it down. It was sneezing that got you, because you didn't expect that.
Yeah.
The thing is, I worked with a non-smoker who was always off sick, always had a whole list of medications and illnesses, and she used to tell me off for smoking. And I thought, well, take a look at you. You take a week off with a sore throat. I'm back at work after 2 days with cracked ribs.
Well, I never seem to get anything out of. I think in my entire life, most of the illnesses I've had in my time were all in my childhood. You know, we had things like measles and mumps and tonsillitis and stuff like that.
Yeah, I had all those.
But
We were from the generation where if somebody had it, your parents would send you around to see them, so you'd get it over with.
But after the age of, I don't know, 18, 20, something like that, I never got anything. Occasional cold, occasional bout of flu.
I think I only had the proper flu once. I thought it was a cold, and I went back to work after 3 days, and I thought, no, I really shouldn't be here. And I went home again. I thought, no, it's proper flu this time. But I thought colds, yeah, but flu once, nothing else. It really pissed off the NHS. They did liver scans and heart scans, and they checked me for all kinds of cancers. I only had a bloody swollen leg. They just ignored that. But once I actually told them the truth about the drinking and smoking, and I was straight for all the tests. I had 2 sets of chest X-rays, and they couldn't find anything. They put me in that CT scanner that makes you go up and round and God knows what. They couldn't find anything in there. And now they won't speak to me. I think they've written me off as bad for the stats.
Well, I suppose I would be too, because I haven't. Yeah, apart from colds and flu, it's been nothing. I'm a bit unsteady on my feet these days, but that's because I'm 70 and I don't get enough exercise.
I'm a bit unsteady sometimes, but that's usually because of something that comes out of a bottle.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
No.
I do notice that when I sit out in the pub garden, I'm quite good walking to the table. I'm not so good walking away from it.
Well, my father's 80 this year. Well, next January. He's still alive. He smoked like a chimney all his life.
Do you still smoke?
No, he gave it up after his strokes, but I think he misses it. I think he still sneaks the occasional small cigar. He likes those little, what do they call them, cafe cream?
I don't know, yeah.
He has one of them once in a while, but he started off on Woodbines Untipped. I don't know. He did tell me what age he was when he started. I think he was about 10 or 11.
I didn't start smoking till I was about 19 or 20.
I was 21. I started it when I was camping because I noticed people who smoked didn't have the midges and flies around them.
Oh yes, I've heard that.
And I thought, okay, I'll try out cigars. I quite liked cigars. I thought, cigars are expensive, I'll try some cigarettes. And I actually didn't like them at first. The first pack I bought, I didn't like at all. But I persisted. I tried a different brand, and all right, these are okay.
Well, I started as
there were times when there would be a group of non-smokers, and you'd move away from them to have a cigarette out of politeness, and they'd want you to come back, because if you're around, all the flies and midges go away. And now they can sit there in their flies and midges while I'm sitting on the other side of the beer garden, we're having a fag. I think it's because the smoke is has some insecticidal properties.
Oh, I'm sure it does, because smoke has always been used as it's an insecticide, it's a fungicide, it's a bactericide, or
and I noticed if you notice sparrows particularly, but some birds, but particularly sparrows, will smoke bathe. If there's smoke rising from, well, I burn stuff outside a lot. I burn waste outside, and they'll sit up in the trees and in the smoke.
Oh, I've never seen that.
They're there opening their wings up and getting it in, because it gets rid of all the mites that have grown in them. And
yeah.
That might actually be why jackdaws build nests in chimneys.
Well, they like a nice blast of smoke.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's any sort. Well, not any sort of smoke, but it's wood smoke, and effectively tobacco smoke is wood smoke.
Yeah, it's burning plant material just the same.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a really funny look from some guy. Some guy came round to eco-test the place. I thought, this place has been here since 1850 or something. It wasn't built in the era of insulation and cavity walls. It's solid granite walls here. But he came to eco-test it, and he said, how do you use the heating? And I told him how to use the heating. And he said, what do you do with all your recycling? I said, well, most of it goes, plastic stuff goes in the bin, the cardboard stuff I take out the back and burn it. And he was horrified. I thought, it's plant material. It came from carbon monoxide. That's what it was made from. It's just going back into the air to make more plant material.
Yeah. Well, when
dioxide, sorry, not monoxide.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the carbon monoxide detector on the ceiling, so that's probably what got in my head.
Well, when I was living in Devon and they brought in recycling, I stopped putting anything out at all. I burnt everything, plastics included.
Oh no, I'm quite happy to let them have the plastics, but if it's wood stuff, I'll burn it. I've got a fire pit, a chimney, and an incinerator bin. I'm not letting them go to waste. And I gotta admit, I do like a good fire.
Well, they are nice. I've got one of those artificial ones. I never put it on, actually.
Oh, I haven't had a proper fire since I was a kid. I'd almost forgotten how to do it.
Is that the only kind of heating you've got?
No, there's central heating. It's oil-based central heating. And this summer it really hasn't cost that much because it's always been wet and miserable. It hasn't really been cold. So, but the central heating costs some money. The wood burning stove costs nothing at all. Well, it cost me one match.
Yes, the insects. I've been wondering whether all this, all these bugs that go around hospitals might be something to do with the fact that when they banned smoking in hospitals, they were in effect ceasing to fumigate them.
There could be an element of that, that's for sure. Another one they did was they took out all the copper handrails and copper door handles and they replaced them with wooden ones. Well, copper is definitely bactericidal.
Is it?
Yeah, it wasn't actually copper, it was brass, but that's copper and zinc. Copper's bactericidal and zinc helps with wound healing.
Oh,
they took them all out and they replaced them with wooden ones, and wooden ones are absolute dream for bacteria. They can hide in all the crevices, and they build up little bits of dirt in the grain. And then they're saying, "Oh, we should maybe take them out and put copper ones in." You dozy bastards! You already had that.
I never heard that about copper.
Oh, they include it in pig diets to keep the gut bacteria under control. Copper and zinc. The zinc helps them heal up faster, and the copper reduces the bacteria. The trouble with that is it does, when they spread it on the land, it does sort of start building up metals in the soil.
Oh.
But yeah, copper has very good antibacterial properties. That's what makes me wonder about these copper bracelets. That people say that the copper bracelets help with rheumatism and arthritis and things like that. And I thought, I wonder how that works. So I'm wondering whether arthritis and rheumatism have some bacterial cause that nobody's found yet.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's quite possible it's classed as autoimmune, I think, but it's possible that it's an immune response to something we don't know about. I mean, somebody did a genetic. We know about 400 species of bacteria that live in the gut. Somebody did a genetic analysis, and the result was that there's at least twice that number that we haven't found yet. There's at least half the genes they found that it doesn't belong to anything they know about. So the idea that there might be a disease-causing bacteria that's causing autoimmune diseases, it's not that unlikely. It's getting modern medicine to admit that it might be wrong. That's the big issue.
Well, I increasingly think they're probably wrong about everything.
Well, they've done that themselves with all the rubbish they tell you about smoking and.
Well, exactly, but it's also everything else. It's it's sugar and salt and fat and.
Yeah, and they've openly admitted that the alcohol units were just made up.
Oh yeah, that was admitted more or less at the outset.
And the 5 a day vegetable thing, that was just a number they picked out of the air.
Yeah.
And you think, well, if you've made that up, what else have you made up?
Indeed. But I kind of wonder whether my kind of working hypothesis these days is that most of the I was going to tell you about how I started smoking. That was I've told the story several times on my blog, which is that I lived in the house of the very first anti-smoker.
Wait a minute.
You've just frozen.
I appear to have lost the screen. All right, okay. I just lost the screen for a minute.
Yeah, you're back now.
Mm.
Yeah, I lived in the house. My parents lived in Brazil at the time, and while I was in England, I used to stay with a family whose father figure was a doctor, and the very first anti-smoker I ever came across. But his attitude to smoking was entirely emotional. There wasn't. One evening he shouted at his son for, I think he caught him smoking. And I realised that, at least in his particular case, that it wasn't based on reason, it was based on something else. It was, he called it a filthy, filthy, filthy habit.
Yeah, I remember those.
And at that point, I'd been up until that point, I'd been reading lots of things about how smoking was bad for you and caused cancer and stuff like that. But once this guy came out with that, I thought, I don't believe in this anymore. And that was when I started smoking, because I had I'd lost my fear of it.
Yeah, it was a bit more practical, maybe. Just wanted to get rid of the flies when I was camping.
I've never been camping, so
Oh, I used to do that a lot when I was younger, and I used to love hearing all the other guys saying, "Oh, the flies are tents are full of flies. We can't get rid of the flies." And I'm thinking, my tent hasn't got any flies in it. My tent's full of smoke. And you remember when all these old thatched houses that didn't have a chimney, they just let it all seep out through the thatch.
yes,
The house must have been full of smoke all the time.
yeah, it was. It was. I got
So it
photos.
was probably covered in soot, but hygiene-wise, it was pretty clean.
Or wasn't it you who made the point that the cigarette smoke is the purest smoke that there is?
I don't know. I've often mentioned that we've grown up around smoke. We'd have fires in caves, fires in houses, fires in. Well, even when I was a kid, every house had a fire. There was smoke everywhere all the time. Now it's double glazed. It's centrally heated. There is no smoke, and asthma is going through the roof. And they blame it on smoking.
But it was prescribed. The smoking was prescribed at one time as a treatment for asthma.
Yeah,
Back in the 50s or earlier.
yeah. It was supposed to open up the airways. And the blowing smoke up the arse, that was actually a genuine prescription for drowning. They'd get a big bellows full of tobacco smoke, stick it up your arse and puff you full of tobacco smoke. I don't know how the hell they expected that to work.
Well, maybe it did. Maybe it did.
Maybe it was just such a shock. You know? Can you imagine coming around and farting and seeing this big cloud of smoke and thinking, what the fuck was in that curry?
Well, it may be. I mean, if well, smoke is antibacterial, so us smokers must be fairly low on bacteria or some bacteria.
I think we've got an extra layer of resistance. And I don't know if you want to put it together with some of the conspiracy theories, it might be why they want rid of us. Some of the conspiracy theories reckon the government is trying to infect people with all kinds of horrible diseases. There was a case recently, I think a Filipino immigrant, he died of an unidentified bacterial disease. I thought, well, it was in the south of England somewhere. I thought, well, these days it's not that hard to identify a bacterial disease. We've got all these genetic techniques, we can just figure out what it is in a couple of days. But it's still unidentified. And I thought, well, if you wanted to wipe out a good chunk of the population with some kind of disease, the smokers are really inconvenient.
Well, what makes you think we have an extra layer of resistance?
It's the extra antibacterial effect of the smoking.
Yeah.
It's antibacterial, antifungal, and it's the extra vitamin B. I hadn't actually realized until you sent me that thing Rose wrote that it's not nicotine you breathe in, it's niacin, because it's been oxidized as you burn it.
Yeah.
So that's why the vaping works for a lot of people, because it's nicotine in the liquid, but then they heat it up into a vapor, and that'll oxidize it. So they're breathing in niacin. That's why the patches don't work, because they're just plain nicotine.
Yeah, that was what Rose was saying.
Yeah, so if you made patches with niacin in them, it might actually work. But they can't do that, because that would mean they'd have to admit that niacin comes from nicotine.
Well, niacin was a sort of funny way of renaming nicotinic acid.
Yeah, because it was embarrassing for them. It was curing a disease called pellagra, and so they put it in. I think they put it in bread.
Yeah, they
Started
did. They did. Yeah, they
adding
fortified.
it to bread,
Yeah, I don't know whether they
but
still do that, but probably not because it's.
that's probably not. It's more profitable to sell you vitamin B pills in the chemist shop now.
I don't know
But yeah,
how much niacin you get from cigarettes, but it can't be very much.
it wouldn't need to be very much though. I mean, you never needed very much of a vitamin. You're talking micrograms per day mostly.
Hmm.
And it's a big fuss about those energy drinks. But if you look at the label, yeah, it's got caffeine, but it's also got a whole list of vitamins in it. It's not just sugar and caffeine; it's a whole list of vitamins. And if people keep drinking those things, probably with a bit less sugar and caffeine, okay. But if people keep drinking that sort of stuff, they're going to get healthy. We can't have that. What would the pharmaceutical industry do then? See, even New Scientist once ran an editorial that said the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want to cure you. It wants to keep you on the books. It wants to treat you, but it doesn't want to cure you. If it cures you, you're not paying anymore. Once you run medicine as a business, it's not profitable to cure people.
Well, that's what I always used to say to my dentist. I said, if I stop drinking, if I stop drinking sweet, sugary, sweet tea, and you people figure out ways of curing dental caries, you're out of business. And
Yeah,
he used to just laugh and say, well, that'll never happen.
I know. It's not allowed to happen.
I'm not sure. I can understand that. I mean, I sort of think that is how the pharmaceutical industry works.
It's a business. It's not some altruistic medical group. It's a business. They're there to make money. And you can't blame them for that. That's what they do. But they will shut down things that compete with them, and they will work to keep the money flowing. So they'll come up with treatments for things, but they don't really want cures. I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised if there was a cure for cancer that's been sat on.
Why
As
would?
front, it would make no business sense. I spent many years working with probiotics. A bacterium, you take it in and it gets rid of the deadly bacteria and it makes your gut healthy. And I met a few scientists who said, "Why don't you make one that stays there?" And I said, "I'd love to, but nobody would buy it because if you had a bacterium that you could put into one pig in an entire piggery and it would spread through the entire piggery and cure all the pigs and they'd never get sick again, you'd only sell one. No company would touch that. They want one. They want something that the farmer has to put into every pig every day. They don't want something you just put in one dose in once and it clears everything."
Oh, is that a bit like these wheat seeds that people have to buy?
Yeah, the GM ones, they're not allowed to carry on the crop for next year from the harvest this year. They have to buy a new one.
So that ties them to the GM industry.
Yeah, yeah, they can't get away from it then.
Well,
So nobody really wants the perfect answer.
yeah.
They want something that's going to bring in regular money.
Well, it's been a very interesting conversation, and we've touched on lots of things. I sort of feel we could almost do a second. have a second discussion at some other point in time.
Oh, you have to give somebody else a chance first.
Yes, I may do that. But yes, anyway, it's coming towards the end of my day. I'm beginning to feel a bit sleepy. This is sort of around about the time I usually turn in.
This is about the time I usually start thinking about a blog.
Well, anyway, it's been very nice talking to you, and
Yeah, you too.
very illuminating, and I'm sure all sorts of. What I'll do is, I hope this via recorder is still recording. Oh, we've got 1 hour and 24 minutes on it. It's not too bad.
You need to do some editing. You have to edit that down a bit.
Yeah, well, there's a number of things. I'll go through and I'll listen and I'll take out anything which seems a bit unsuitable. And
yeah. You can keep in the insults to Obo, he doesn't mind.
And I'll edit it down a bit. I might leave quite a lot of it in because a lot of it's very interesting. And
Right. Well, if you think somebody will sit through an hour and a half of it.
Well, I could do it in 2 sections. That would be an idea. But okay, well, anyway, thank you very much for that. I'm glad we managed to.
Well, good timing. The dog's just woken up and wants to go out.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'll let you know when I've got something that's in a viewable form on YouTube or wherever.
All right, I'll try and put something on Twitter with it then.
Okay.
Try and get some traffic that way.
Right, so I'll end the call now.
Okay.
Okay, bye for now.
Okay, see you there.